you in our fourth webinar in our project for green hydrogen hype and potential benefits and challenges for Egypt. My name is Hafez Salmawi. I am a professor of energy engineering at the Gazig University in Egypt and key expert in the project support to the technical and financial sustainability of renewable energy and energy efficiency sectors. It's our pleasure in the project to hold our fourth webinar on the green hydrogen hype, potential benefits and challenges of Egypt. The webinar is a part of our program of webinars which tackles the development of sustainable energy in Egypt from different aspects, including technical, planning, financial, investment needs and challenges, business models, sector integration, regulations, public awareness, and energy transition. As all of you know that this project is an EU-supported project in cooperation with both Ministry of Electricity and Renewable Energy and Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources in Egypt. The project is executed by a consortium of consultants led by DAI Human Dynamics. The project consists of 5 components. The first component is reorganization of the core functions of NAREA. Second component, modernization of the renewable energy framework. And the third component is establishment of energy modeling unit. Fourth component, establishment of the Cairo Sustainable Energy Information Center. And the last one, but not least for sure, technical assistance to energy efficiency and climate unit at the Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources. The selection of the introductory part of the title of our today's webinar is the Green Hydrogen Hype, which tries to explore the emerging interest in hydrogen worldwide as a part of the energy transition and mitigation of the climate change. This interest has been driven by the concept of net zero carbon emissions and the leap in the renewable energy, which took place over the last 2 decades. This interest goes from bottom up. I appreciate if we could Engineer Khalid, I appreciate if you can mute your microphones.
Okay, I'm sorry.
This interest has been driven by the concept of net zero carbon emissions and the leap on the renewable energy, which took place over the last 2 decades. This interest goes from bottom up as well as top bottom. According to the recent published paper by Oxford Institute for Energy Studies, it shows that the manufacturing sector is a leading sector in the interest in hydrogen. This includes machinery, equipment, vehicle manufacturers, chemical industries, basic metal, and electrical equipment manufacturers. Also, the transportation sector has an interest in hydrogen, mainly both aviation and marine transport. Regarding the energy sector, the main driving subsectors are electricity production and gas distributions. This doesn't mean that other energy subsectors are not interested. Sure, professional, scientific, and technical activities came as one of the leading sectors of the aforementioned activities. On the top-bottom side, which has been confirmed as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, whereas the governments inject stimulus package for the economy, this money should go to sustainable activities. On the national and regional and international levels, different countries have announced their hydrogen strategies, starting with Japan in 2017, followed by South Korea, New Zealand, and Australia. This trend has been confirmed in 2020, where many countries in Europe and worldwide have developed their own national strategies. This has been concluded by the EU strategy on hydrogen in July 2020. Several countries have even developed a joint cooperation programs, including Australian and Japan joint statement of cooperation on hydrogen in November 2019 on hydrogen and fuel cells, which signed back in November 2019, where hydrogen production base is being built in Australia to meet both domestic demand and export demand in Japan. NEOM project in Saudi Arabia is another example for producing 1.2 million tons of green ammonia for export. The MOU signed between Germany and Morocco is another example of this cooperative and mutual dependence attitude of hydrogen development, which is about know-how transfer and production of hydrogen. Egypt has also started its effort to formulate its national hydrogen strategy. A national committee has been established based on a cabinet ministerial decree in November 2020. This strategy will include developing a vision regarding production, use, and export of hydrogen. Considering this hype on hydrogen, and more specifically, its green-based hydrogen, it has been seen in the renewable energy and energy efficiency project the importance of inviting knowledgeable experts in the field to tackle this subject from its different sides. It will help all of us to have a comprehensive knowledge of this emerging market, where all evidence indicates that green hydrogen will be a key element in the coming energy transition. This will further help us to identify the opportunities and challenges in Egypt in this emerging renewable energy storage, carrier, and potential environmentally friendly industrial feedstock. At this point, it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Mohammed Al-Khayyat, Executive Chairman of the New and Renewable Energy Authority in Egypt, to provide his welcome speech. Dr. Khayyat.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hafez. It is my pleasure really to join all of you such important webinar. Also, it is my pleasure also to have such a webinar with Mr. Ahmed Ghali and also Mr. Jonathan. It's a long time, either due to COVID-19 and other commitments, we couldn't meet physically, and we hope that all of you are safe, and for all the world too. Good afternoon, everybody. Really, it is my pleasure to join such webinar. And regarding the green hydrogen, I have the pleasure also to share with you a quick overview regarding the renewable energy market in Egypt, especially what has been done during the last year, 2020, and despite the negative impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the global economy, which decreased with around 4.4%, the renewable energy market in Egypt witnessed an outstanding year. In numbers, more than 2 gigawatts of new projects already either signed or approved to be implemented, in a specific 1.4 gigawatt of wind energy projects and 0.7 of photovoltaic. And for sure, such projects will add to the installed capacity around 30% of the total installed capacity. Consequently, it could be one of the most amazing year for the renewable energy, which also have a positive socio-economic dimension to have or to introduce around 14,000 new jobs for the renewable energy. This is regarding the renewable energy, and also which reflect the attractiveness of the investment in the Egyptian market in general, and also for the renewable energy in specific, and how could renewable energy could be as an arm to attract foreign direct investment to Egypt. On the other hand, and also during the year 2020, and for the first time, the Ministry of Finance already launched green bond issuance in last September. The target was $500 million to be collected, alhamdulillah, yani what has been collected is 750, and this has yani, a positive impact on the interest for such green bonds. Especially renewable energy has a share around 20% out of this portfolio, in addition to other sectors such as water desalination and also sanitation, in addition also to the transportation sector. By the way, the total potential green bonds to be implemented in Egypt or to be issued in Egypt is around 1.9 billion US dollar. This means that we may, inshallah, during the coming period have yani, another round of the green bonds, which could have also yani, a positive impact on the green or the renewable energy. Furthermore, also there is a great effort regarding electrifying the transport sector. All of us know yani, the metro, which started almost 1987. After that, we have now yani, 2 lines for the monorail, one in Cairo and another one in Alexandria, and the distances are differs from government to government, but this is also an application for the electrifying the transport sector. And lastly, the high-speed train, which the MOU already signed with Siemens, and that yani, it will cover potentially 1,000 kilometers. All of these activities, frankly speaking, represent the major role for the electricity sector, and also its ability now to feed all of such projects with the electricity, and also to have a green source in addition to the other sources for feeding such transportation sectors. This is regarding the transport sector, and based on this, and it's a quick overview, we do rely on having such activities to support Egypt's vision regarding the year 2030, inshallah, and to have more and more renewable energy projects, and have more recognized prices in Egypt too. Thank you very much.
I
think Dr. Hafez, you are muted.
I'm muted. Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Ahmed. I would like to thank Dr. Khayat for his wide spectrum presentation regarding the status of renewable energy in Egypt, as well as activities going on for electrification, because electrification is specifically in the transport sector represents a kind of increased share of renewable, because as we increase share of electricity, by default, we would like to increase share of renewable in the energy mix of the system. Now, I think we need to move right fast to our speakers, because we have really very distinguished speakers who are quite knowledgeable about the topic and will cover this topic from different angles, which could help us to understand the size and dimension of and how things might evolve in future. Our first presenter is Dr. Theodore Constantinescu. He will talk to us about the EU hydrogen strategy. Dr. Theodore Constantinescu is a principal advisor to the Director General for Energy in the European Commission. He is an engineer and economist by education. Before joining the Commission, he set up the executive director, the Building Performance Institute Europe. He was the president of the Romanian Agency for Energy Conservation, and for the period between 2008-2009, he ensured the presidency of the inner network of European energy agencies. Between 1996 and 2007, he consolidated the energy efficiency and related environmental activities of the Energy Charter Secretariat in Brussels. Dr. Theodore, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor El-Zarmavi. I'm very pleased to be with you here today. And thank you for inviting me to speak in this interesting event. I should say that I'm very pleased also because of the fact I see, despite the sanitary crisis and the problems to which we all had to pass, the memorandum of understanding on a strategic cooperation in energy between Europe and Egypt goes ahead, and not only goes ahead, but also is exploring new territories, and in this case, in particular, the support hydrogen can bring to decarbonization and to a better integration of renewables, and in the end, to foster economic development. So this is for us also very important. So I'm very pleased to see that actually your sustainable energy strategy, in a way, is going in all these directions as well, and therefore we are giving a lot of support, and we are ready to support you in all your initiatives in this field, including in your leadership role you have in the African Union and in the Arab League. So this being said, from my part, just as an introduction, I will refer today to the hydrogen policy in Europe, to the hydrogen strategy, which was just mentioned before by Dr. El-Kayat. And I will also try to underline the international cooperation aspects which can be relevant for you and for the cooperation between the EU and the Egyptian authorities and industrial actors. So next slide, please. Sorry, because not having possibility to use a computer but my iPad, I have to ask you. So the European Green Deal, you know, of course, very well, it was the first major priority announced by the President von der Leyen when it was set out in the communication in December 2019 already. And the Green Deal provides actually an action plan to boost the efficient use of resources by moving to a clean circular economy, to restore biodiversity and cut pollution, but also to address climate change. And in this context, energy is playing absolutely a key important role. EU aims to become climate neutral in 2050, and we proposed a European climate law to turn this political commitment into legal obligations. Energy is, as I said, key in this process, and therefore there are a number of actions which are relevant and to which I will refer in the next slide. I would start maybe by saying, and this remains, you may recall from the time we were presenting the Energy Union, energy efficiency first concept. Energy efficiency is indeed very important because first of all, we have to take care to moderate the energy demand, not to waste energy, and to ensure that energy is consumed in the most cost-effective way. In buildings, in industrial processes, in appliances, in transport. Europe is trying to boost the economy while greening the energy system through the renovation wave. It's a plan to actually renovate buildings across Europe, including hospitals and schools, but also other public and private buildings, because in this way we can also, and this is relevant for many countries, address the issue of energy poverty and reduce the energy bills. Plus, adding to security of supply and eliminating waste energy. In addition, this is an area where most of the jobs are created, according to all the analysis we have made and others like the International Energy Agency. In terms of renewable energy, we have this year also, the last year also came with an offshore renewable strategy, which I think it's a very important element, because it aims on one hand to send a strong signal of support to European renewable industry, and at the same time to accommodate the huge needs of Europe in order to reach its 2050 objectives of carbon neutrality. So last year we have seen some decline in renewable and in general in energy investments. IEA estimated overall a 17% decline due to the economic crisis. And now, and this is important, and this is one of the key elements of the Green Deal, to make investments which already help us achieve more ambitious targets for 2030. And making these investments, we avoid later on stranded costs and stranded assets and lock-in effects. And therefore, it's important to make these sustainable investments already in the coming years. It is, in this context, we also looked at the 10E regulation at European level, and even more important for the discussion on hydrogen, the energy system integration and the hydrogen strategy itself. Hydrogen is a key enabler. We see, and we want to look at the energy system in its integrity, energy efficiency, renewables, to have a comprehensive approach, and to look at how to better plan and operate electricity, gas, hydrogen, heat networks together, and how to improve overall system efficiency and to decarbonize the sectors which otherwise are difficult to decarbonize. We see, and I saw also in Egypt, your plants, the share of electricity is increasing. In your case, it's even in nominal terms, the amount of electricity production has doubled in the last 10 years, and perhaps it will double again in the next 10 years. So all this electricity, and in particular coming from renewables, has also the potential to decarbonize other sectors of the economy. And this is a key important role for hydrogen linked to sector integration, because even in 2050, the analysis we have shows that perhaps in the range of 50% of the final consumption will be electricity. So it will increase in Europe, it's now about 23%. In 2050 will be in the range of 50%, but almost half of the consumption will be in the form not of electrons, but of molecules, which have to be decarbonized as well. So biomethane will have, and biogas will have a contribution, but you also need other gases and other liquid fuels, which will be to a large extent based on hydrogen and based on renewable hydrogen, which helps decarbonization. So this is where I think it's equally important, and given your ambitious plans on renewables, we find a really common ground between Europe and Egypt in this field. Next slide, please. And therefore, the strategy which I'm going to refer now covers these aspects, and looking has its roots in the energy system integration, which was published the same day on 8th of July, and looks deeply into how to create an investment agenda to boost demand and scale up production, develop hydrogen infrastructure and markets, stimulate research and fund research and innovation, and also the international dimension, international collaboration. At the same time, we have launched the Hydrogen Alliance. The Hydrogen Alliance, which is a really concerted effort with all the services of the Commission to bring together all the major stakeholders in industry, in research, the regional authorities, and to identify also important projects of common European interest, and to really create an ecosystem where to make best use of the opportunities that hydrogen can bring to system integration, to overall system efficiency, and to decarbonization. Somehow I don't see the slides. I see myself.
I appreciate if you can stop sharing screen from your side so we could share screen from our side. You are now sharing screen from your side.
I don't touch anything because I'm on my iPad. I couldn't connect the computer.
Yeah. So
it had changed while I was speaking. So, but it was not me because I'm not able to do it. You see.
You can share it.
Because so far it was not me who shared the slides. So I'm not in a position to do it because I'm captive on the.
Yes, we will share. It seems we will be able to share it. What?
So far, it was possible to see them now.
Okay.
It's back.
Resume again.
Okay, next slide, please. Because I introduced the alliance, which, by the way, has just started work this week. Now, the hydrogen strategy in a snapshot. So it's looking at the phased approach, 2024, 2030, and 2050. Now, in Europe, the overall consumption of hydrogen is about 10 million tons, 9.8. And 95% of it is based on fossil fuels. So what we need to do is start to decarbonize the current hydrogen production. And therefore, by 2024, we plan to have 6 gigawatts of renewable hydrogen electrolyzers, which to replace, start replacing the existing hydrogen production, and to start developing regulations for liquid hydrogen markets and to planning infrastructure. By 2030, is a more ambitious 40 gigawatt of renewable hydrogen electrolyzers target, and exploring new applications in hard to decarbonize sectors like steel and heavy duty transport. Look at creation of hydrogen valleys, a priority underlined also by our President von der Leyen, and my slide is gone again. I didn't touch anything. I cannot even touch it even if I've done. Okay. So, and by 2030, also the industry has identified an additional 40 gigawatts potential of renewable hydrogen and electrolyzers in the neighborhood, in the southern and eastern neighborhood of the EU. And by 2050, of course, we'll aim to scale up and to use hydrogen to decarbonize all the sectors, and also to use hydrogen for production of synthetic fuels, in particular for aviation, and to have even a EU-wide infrastructure network and an open international market where Europe can be used as a benchmark. Next slide. As you can see here, developing hydrogen and electrolyzer, we speak renewable hydrogen, a need of investment of 20 to 40 billion euros. But this is accompanied by even more investments required in additional renewable electricity production, 200 to 340 billion euros, and also in hydrogen transport and distribution, plus the end-use sectors, which I was mentioning among the priorities. Of course, the first priorities will start to use and to replace the fossil-based hydrogen with renewable hydrogen will be in the sectors which are currently the biggest consumers. These are the fertilizers and the refining. And by the way, I know that Egypt also has the biggest installed refining capacities in the whole Africa, so you may find an interest in this as well. Next, and we try to stimulate investments accordingly. So we have really, through the Next Generation EU and now through the Recovery and Resilience Fund, make a strong link between economic recovery after the crisis and the objectives of the Green Deal, because actually investments initially planned to support the Green Deal will de facto help us getting out of the economic crisis as well. Speaking about creating the demand, we'll start to replace the existing hydrogen and reducing therefore the CO2 emissions, greening the fertilizers, and later on the steel and other heavy-duty applications, as well as in transport and maritime and aviation. We need to support end-use consumers. This is clear on one hand, and on the other hand, to create the markets. And here is an aspect which is very important, and which will be very important also for you, the certification of renewable and low carbon hydrogen. Because in future, if it is to have global markets, it's clear that we need to have an agreement about what is renewable, what is low carbon hydrogen, and how we can trade it, and how it can effectively contribute to the decarbonization of the various sectors. For this, we may have even targets for renewable hydrogen in certain sectors, and of course, develop the appropriate infrastructure. Next slide, please. developing the infrastructure because it will be clearly important to be able to move hydrogen, to move it in Europe, across Europe, but also to move it internationally from the place of production to the place of use, and to enable imports of renewable and low carbon hydrogen. It is therefore very important to have this infrastructure developed, but it's even more important in the beginning to start to have the common low threshold for hydrogen production facilities, for low carbon hydrogen production facilities, to have a scheme of certification renewables, to have therefore also a revision of the ETS, to have supporting mechanisms for the producers, for example, carbon contract for difference, to develop liquid markets. And gradually then we develop the infrastructure. In some cases, we may repurpose the existing gas infrastructure. In some cases, it may be possible to have some blending wherever this is appropriate, although it's not the most economic and preferred option. So we try, therefore, to revise the 10E. A proposal was already tabled in December, and also the 10-year network development plans to ensure full integration of hydrogen projects and hydrogen infrastructure in this planning. Next slide, please. Research and innovation is another pillar of the strategy, and this is very important because since decades we have invested into this in Europe, and it would have not been possible to be at the level we are now if we would have not made these decades of investments in research and innovation. Certain things moved faster, certain things maybe didn't develop accordingly to the plans, but more and more we see the opportunity now for hydrogen playing this very important role in large-scale decarbonization, large-scale integration of renewables, large-scale energy storage. And this is something where we try to promote more and more our research efforts. We have fuel cells and hydrogen joint undertaking as a form of partnership in industry and research community since many years. It will be now continued at the new scale as an established clean hydrogen partnership, but we also look at the ETS innovation fund, and we look at the inter-regional innovation investment instruments with the aim to basically scale up production. Now I was referring to electrolyzers where Europe, we are leading now, and we try to support all cost-effective integration of renewable projects possible, because we started with 10, 20 kilowatts 10, 15 years ago, and now we have 10 megawatt in operation, financed in Köln is a refinery. Another 20 megawatt is under construction, and we just launched last year a call for 100 megawatt electrolyzer. And we look both at PEM and alkaline technologies. For infrastructure, it's also important to look what is still needed to adapt the infrastructure, to adapt the LNG terminals, to see when necessary and how we can repurpose existing gas infrastructures. For end-use applications to the new industrial processes and multi-megawatt fuel cells, in particular for mobility, it's also important in maritime applications. And of course, the cross-cutting areas where having common standards, ensuring safety remain very important, along the issue of critical raw materials, reuse and recycling, which in the end will contribute to reducing the cost of electrolyzers and the hydrogen production through renewables. Next slide. And next slide is the last but not least, is about the international dimension. The international dimension, it is something which is really an extremely importance also for you and for the cooperation between us and you. Because we identified in the strategy, first of all, the bilateral regional cooperation, then the multilateral fora, and then the international markets. And when we speak about bilateral and regional fora, I have to say that in particular, North Africa is identified as a potential partner and supplier of clean renewable hydrogen. Indeed, you have in North Africa a very strong competitive advantage, particularly because of the renewable sources, being solar and wind, plus a geographical proximity to Europe. North Africa and Europe are connected also, in some cases, with gas pipelines, and they can be used as such or repurposed. It remains to be explored the best opportunities. I have to say that in the coming months, the Commission will have in-depth policy dialogue with all Southern Neighborhood partner countries with a view to define and agree the programs of technical and financial cooperation for the period 2021-2027. And we propose that energy, including hydrogen and renewable hydrogen, will be high on the agenda of the future cooperation. But of course, this will depend also on you and the other partner countries. It is, I think, extremely important to continue this cooperation, and Egypt has a leadership role in Africa, as I have mentioned in the beginning of my presentation. So your leading role in regional cooperation will be very important for the Union of Mediterranean. The role you play also in gas, hosting the East Mediterranean Gas Forum. It will be also important. You'll continue to play an important role in the Arab world, and Egypt has a prominent presence in MEDREC for the regulators, as well as in all the plans related to the transit of electricity and gas and other energy sources in the area and towards Europe. It's therefore very, very important to exploit this potential, and the vision about hydrogen you may wish to develop should definitely look at the available potential, at the technologies which could lead also maybe to a concrete project very soon, but also we need to study the supply and demand for hydrogen, both internally and the potential export markets, how to bring the full value chain of hydrogen together, investors, governments, institutional industrial partners, and this is what we try to do now in Europe with the Clean Hydrogen Alliance. We need to study the needed infrastructure to transport and trade hydrogen. So all these aspects will have to be addressed. At the same time, we encourage you to continue your cooperation with the International Energy Agency and IRENA. Here, for example, the Clean Energy Ministerial, where Europe is co-leading, we have it hosted by the IEA, and we aim to create port consortium. We aim to identify the objectives and the goals at the global level for renewable hydrogen production. Under the International Partnership for Hydrogen Economy, we try to identify, if possible, a common methodology for certifying renewable and low carbon hydrogen. So, or at least to know what are the different methodologies applied and to make them comparable. In the end, aiming to achieve these international markets, so which are important to create opportunities for all regions of the world and for decarbonizing deeply the economies. Next slide, please. So I would say that most of this work will be connected to the alliance in Europe, boosting demand, developing hydrogen infrastructure and markets, research and innovation, but also this international dimension. And I think you'll always find good partners among all the companies. There are over 800 who have applied and are part of this alliance, who are willing also to explore opportunities in the southern neighborhood and to develop good projects together. So thank you very much from my side.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dr. Constantinescu, for this very comprehensive presentation about the EU hydrogen strategy. It shows that maybe the track we have in renewable energy could help very much, but we might have a different challenge in hydrogen where infrastructure may be needed. In renewable energy to produce electricity, infrastructure was there, transmission lines and so on. But the experience gained in regulations regarding supporting production, I believe it could be very much helpful. Also, the point which has been touched about the international cooperation may raise a question that there is recently understood that there is a financing mechanism for member states in the EU, which is expected to have a call for proposal soon for the implementation of projects in renewable energy and energy efficiency. How a country like Egypt could benefit from this, as we understand that this mechanism could allow for projects in third countries?
Yes, there will be more financing schemes. There are certain schemes which are, of course, at EU level. No, those linked in particular to the cohesion policy, for example, structural funds. There are others which, like for research and large-scale demo, which are also even under Horizon, open to third countries. So you are, of course, encouraged to participate. There might be also schemes supported by the EIB and in the context of the recovery and resilience. So will have to be identified the various opportunities, the various schemes which are under different organizations and where this could help. But mostly, I would say, of course, this will have to be, and this is what we see also in Europe, we try to stimulate as much as possible, but the biggest investments will come from the private sector and from identifying good partners which are willing to invest, and for which, of course, the European Investment Bank and the other mechanisms can guarantee or provide support to leverage, but stimulating, of course, mainly the private investments.
Thank you very much. I think there is a lot of questions coming so far. I think we were going to switch to our next presenter. However, we're going to have a Q&A session by the end. So please forward your question to our Q&A and please identify to whom you would like to forward your question if this is possible. Our next presenter is...
thank you, and to say I can stay with you still 15 minutes and I will need to leave, but thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you very much, but please stay with us because we might have other questions, specifically because the EU is a key player in developing, and as I believe also it's a good example for other countries to follow for development which is taking place in EU. Our next presenter, it's supposed to be Engineer Ahmed Mahmoud from EGAZ. Unfortunately, Engineer Mahmoud has unexpected commitment and he will be replaced by Engineer Khalid Zahran to present Egypt vision regarding developments for the hydrogen, as well as how EGAZ, which is the holding company for natural gas in Egypt and the owner of the gas network, could react to the expected development in hydrogen. Engineer Khalid is the general manager for natural gas and value-added projects. His main responsibility is toward climate change and carbon neutrality approach. Mr. Khalid has joined several projects, including the National Energy Strategy for Egypt 2020, which is before the old strategy. Also, he participated in the Energy Strategy 2035 of Egypt. Also, he activating national projects and green bond initiatives, which is Dr. Khayyat talk about it. Engineer Khalid has a background in engineering and he has over 32 experience. Engineer Khalid, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Hafez. It's my pleasure to join this big crowd of experts regarding the energy disciplines, especially speaking about the hydrogen. As far as I have heard from other colleagues that already proceeded this webinar and speaking about the hydrogen initiatives, especially on the European Party, I'm going to just give a brief milestones regarding the way forward for the Egyptian party in terms of the natural gas business.
Engineer Khalid, excuse me, are you going to share the presentation your side, or are we going to share it from our side?
No, share it your side, please, because...
Okay, we will try to share it from our side.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. But anyhow, you hear my voice?
Yes, sure.
Okay. The first slide, I'm going to speak about the main points of the agenda in terms of this webinar. I'm going to speak about the Egyptian hydrogen strategy in the first item. The second item, I will try to configure the international oil companies' investments towards clean energy transition. On my third item, I will try to configure something about the blue and the green hydrogen integrated vision on both sides. And I'm going to move to the Egyptian energy hub in terms of diversifying the cooperation with hydrogen leading countries. And then I will try to wrap up my items by the way forward that I'm going to speak about. Next slide, please. In this slide, do you hear me?
Go ahead. We hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. In this slide, I'm trying to highlight the Egyptian hydrogen strategy, and as far as you already said, Dr. Hafez, there is a national hydrogen strategy committee that had been ratified by a prime ministerial decree. In this strategy, on our side in IGAZ, representing the Minister of Petroleum, we are trying to have a look about the committee scope, identifying the opportunity to produce and export hydrogen. We are trying to configure also the exploring availability for financing schemes and financing mechanisms. And we shall try to have a look about the updating outlook in terms of the energy strategy, the year 2035, which is going to embed the hydrogen as a green energy source in its new updated version. In fact, as far as you already know, our experience in this regards, in terms of the hydrogen, is not a small experience. We already are producing the hydrogen since maybe 20 years ago, but in terms of updating the energy strategy, we are going to be in need for an international consultancy, which is in fact will be mandated a request to study and identify the changes to localize the hydrogen and related industries and the logistics as well in Egypt. Completing the Egyptian the Egyptian hydrogen strategy concerned the top level manager that had been candidated by different ministers. In fact, our Minister of Petroleum had candidated engineer Ahmed Mahmoud. He's the vice chairman for planning and business development in IGAZ, and he will work with the team, the internal, in fact, group that we are forming here in the Ministry of Petroleum, from different internal parties, like from the people of AKIM, which is a petrochemical holding company, the people of Midor, some of the petroleum refinery, and other parties that are allocated in order to verify the committee scope and seek further cooperation with the leading countries in the field of hydrogen, in fact, and in order to configure an implementation mechanism for a pilot project regarding the hydrogen, specifically on the blue, gray, and other hydrogen. As far as you know, we shall rely on the hydrocarbon resources that we're already working with. So the direction will be in this regard, and we are open, totally, in fact, open to integrate with the other party, like the Ministry of Electricity and Renewable Energy, in terms of the other green resources, the green hydrogen resources. This slide, as far as I told you, we are tracking our international oil company partners that are working together in our natural gas business. In the year 2015, as it is shown on the left side of the screen, there was some international companies that were working in gas business in Egypt, but these countries were not as much big as the year 2019, which in fact before the pandemic COVID-19, the situation has been exaggerated, and lots of international companies had interfered to invest in major disciplines in terms of energy, and they will focus to reflect the European, let me say, the European strategic and political pathways in terms of the carbon neutrality that are expected to be the year 2050. As far as it's shown on the right side of the slide, the revising strategy international oil companies had been started just a couple of years ago by companies like Shell, BP, Eni. Lots of companies of these companies are trying to configure their sharing and reflecting their international business, conveying the carbon neutrality with the European Party, and we are trying to stick together and align our thoughts to have a win-win situation, is even in the let me say, in the natural gas business. On the other half or down of these slides, we already have configured the Hydrogen Council initiative that is already fostering the energy transition, and we, as far as I remember, there's lots of companies and international entities that are included, and they are also analytically supported by let me say international reporting companies like Wood Mackenzie and other assessment parties that are fostering the energy transition in all over the world. In my next slide, just we are looking to configure that the Egyptian party, in terms of the hydrogen integrated vision, either was it a blue or green or even other hydrogen resources. We have reviewed lots of efforts that are scattered on the globe, either on the European Party or even on behalf of the other European countries and the MENA region. And in terms of trying to identify a good rule and a major interference for the Egyptian Party, we had configured the project of NEOM, which is currently in place in Saudi Arabia, with all its, let me say, with all its data, like they are planning to produce 650 tons of green hydrogen a day, and about 3,000 tons of green ammonia in the same way, and they already working on let me say, transporting these kind of energy vectors or green hydrogen and ammonia to the European Party, and we are eager enough in Egypt to interfere with the Saudi Arabian parties to discuss to which level we can provide them with, let me say, the infrastructure that might be utilized as a networking, carrying networking for their green hydrogen and green ammonia. On the other side, we already configured the African hydrogen partnership that already had taken in place since the year 2017 between the African and the European parties, and we are keeping an eye about to what extent the European party relying in a number of African countries, including Egypt, Morocco, and other MENA region countries, and we identified that there is a planning for let me say a double pipeline of 48 inches that might go through the European territories, but starting from the let me say the African continent. In fact, in the next slide, or even on the right, the next slide, we shall have a look about the bases of these two lines, which is about 2,500 kilometers, passing through Egypt in both ways, either from Ethiopia, Egypt, Greek, and Italy, and then maybe connected to the Nord Stream networking in Europe, or even from Saudi Arabia through Egypt and going to the other party in Europe, starting from Greek and Italy, and then connecting to the other networking in Europe. We are eager also to configure. Is there a possibility to interfere studying the capability of the natural gas networking in Egypt in such a way that we can make a study and even a pilot project or something in this regard to carry the energy as a blend with the natural gas infrastructure. This is one of the major, in fact, interesting items that we are trying to configure with the European party. And as far as I have learned, that there might be a very coming interaction in this regard between some of the European companies, international companies like maybe Siemens, ThyssenKrupp, maybe the DEME concession of the Belgian kingdom, and maybe other companies will try to configure this situation with Egypt. On the other hand, Egypt, as you know, has already started its energy strategy, which had been ratified due by the year of 2015, and had its first draft in this year. Now, as far as discussed with Dr. Hafez Salmawi, they are trying to update this kind of strategy in order to include the hydrogen as an energy vector, or even as a energy resource in the updating. And they are working on this on behalf of the Ministry of Electricity, and here on behalf of the Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources. We will be in the same balancing level, and we will cope and attribute enough in this updating, maybe in the next few days, gradually. In these terms, on these regards, I had a look about the zero energy or the carbon neutrality mechanism for the European party. They are looking for the first phase to be relying on a blue hydrogen, which is in fact a good opportunity for the Egyptian party, and specifically for the Minister of Petroleum in Egypt to identify which kind of cooperation we can interfere with the European Party in these regards, relying on our hydrocarbon resources like natural gas or other resources, in fact. So the first phase, which is already started the year 2020 up to the 2030, I think it is it will be a very dynamic phase for the petroleum sector in Egypt to interfere as fast as we can with the European Party. In the second phase, as far as I remember, the European Party is working on relying the green hydrogen from energy resources between the year 2030 and 2050, which would be in fact another opportunity for the Egyptian Party, even if it is in terms of the green hydrogen and the energy storage mechanism relying on the electricity sector in Egypt. But as my boss, Engineer Ahmed, had identified in another previous webinar, African Variant with the European Party, he identified that we are totally open to even provide the other sectors in Egypt and on the other side overseas for the European parties with whichever logistics that we can provide in transporting and either on depending on the networking or depending on the experience of the Minister of Petroleum in installing and erecting and constructing a dedicated hydrogen networking, if this will be the case, God willing, or even interfering with the overseas countries, relying on the very good assets for the Egyptian Party, relying on the Suez Canal and other harbors in Egypt in order to transfer this kind of green or blue hydrogen through the shipping or shipment mechanism. Next slide. It's
Engineer Khaled, could you please unmute your microphone, because we don't have a voice so far. Is he unmuted or? Engineer Khaled, could you hear me or? Okay. I think we are in almost the last slide. I think still there is a slide about the way forward, which I believe very much important to be presented. Unfortunately, we lost Engineer Khaled, but I may, if Engineer Khaled allow me to present this last slide, which is about the way forward as part of what they think in the Energy Committee.
Dr. Hafez, do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you now. So okay. Please proceed, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. As far as I told you, in this slide, we are speaking about the two planned pipelines and to what extent could the Egyptian Party interfere with the 48 inches pipeline with the European Party. In the next slide, we are, as far as I told you, are trying to rely on the Egyptian, let me say, capabilities as an energy hub, and try to identify the cooperation with hydrogen leading country, either with the European Party or even with other overseas countries like Japan, Australia, United States, and so on. And in terms of the technology transfer, this is one of the issues that we are seeking, in fact, to have a bilateral successful story between the two parties in order to make, let me say, technology transfer from the European party to the Egyptian party in this regard. Joining the hydrogen capacity building program, everywhere we are hearing that there is a different kind of efforts everywhere in the globe, and we are eager enough to join this hydrogen capacity building program with the European party. As far as I told you, in terms of implementing some pilot project or even demo project in order to let me say to verify the hydrogen opportunity in Egypt, this will be a good idea to start right now as far as we can. All these kinds of interfering mechanism with the European party will give a good opportunity for the Egyptian party to have a market quota, either in the blue or green ammonia or hydrogen as an energy carrier. The way forward, as you are speaking, Dr. Hafez, we have just two milestone stages in terms of stage 1 and stage 2. If we are speaking about stage 1, we are trying to investigate the potential to utilize the Egyptian natural gas assets, either in terms of networking and facilities, and other qualification like the Suez Canal, the marine ports, and so on. We are identifying the value-added natural gas resources, and in fact considering other alternative opportunity costs, interfering, in fact, the hydrogen as an energy vector, which could be extracted from the hydrocarbon resources from either from the gas side or even from other petroleum sites, petroleum product side. We are checking if the possibility of having zero carbon sustainable cities, and as you already know, in the new capital of Egypt, the new administrative capital in Egypt, they are trying to build up a new capital in Egypt, which is in the final days of its first stage, in fact, and it will be like a G4 type, or the G4 generation cities. So we are trying to make different copies of this in other areas, like in Alamein city, which is in fact on the north-western coast of Egypt, and also El Mansoura city in the Delta region, Bursaid city. All these cities and maybe other cities, as far as I know, they are trying to make a sustainable 4G, fourth generation cities that is capable of interfering on a very high level of digitalization and let me say electronic interfering mechanism. Finally, in this first stage, we will try to study the possibility of constructing dedicated hydrogen infrastructure, as far as I told you. And in terms of the stage 2, we are going to allocate a targeted share for the Egyptian hydrogen quota in the international market. We will try also to highlight the Egyptian country among all other countries, either in the region or even in the overseas area, to become a hydrogen pioneer company sticking to the energy hub for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Khaled, for this comprehensive overview. I think we have a lot of questions, but I may forward two quick questions to yourself. First, what's the status of the National Energy Committee for setting the Egyptian hydrogen strategy? Are the committee formulation has been completed, or they are still in the phase of consultation with the stakeholder to develop a kind of agenda, or they already started their work and put a kind like agenda for their work? What's so far the status?
Yes, as far as I already identified on behalf of the Ministry of Petroleum, we already have nominated Engineer Ahmed Mahmoud on this regard, and he already started to make an internal group, or let me say an in-house group having the entire entities in the oil and gas sector, and we are now studying the scope from the oil and gas perspective. We are studying also the interaction mechanism with the international party and the interaction mechanism with other, let me say, with other national sector in Egypt, and mainly, in fact, our neighbor sector, which is the Ministry of Electricity. And we knocked at the door, in fact, of the Ministry of Electricity sector, and we are now on the way to pave the way to launch the first, let me say, the first meeting, hopefully, inshallah, next month. But it's not yet determined. But on their behalf, they are already elaborating this situation, either in-house on the respective, or in bilateral interaction with the Ministry of Petroleum and other ministries like the Ministry of Industry and Trade.
Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Khaled, for this quite clear feedback. I will move forward to Engineer Ahmed Ghali, Managing Director of Siemens Energy in Egypt. Engineer Ghali will talk to us about the recently signed MOU between the Egyptian government or Ministry of Electricity and Siemens regarding hydrogen. But before that, let me introduce Engineer Ghali. Engineer Ahmed Ghali is a managing director for Siemens Energy in Egypt. During his 24 years tenure at Siemens, he has held various managerial positions in Europe and Middle East. Engineer Ghali was most recently the COO of Siemens in Egypt since 2016. Before that, he was a senior executive vice president for wind and renewables in Siemens in the Middle East, and for power and gas for Siemens in Egypt, overseeing a wide range of businesses, segments, services, and technologies. Engineer Ghali has been elected in July 2018 as a president of the German Arab Chamber of Industries and Commerce. He also served as a board member of the Egyptian Junior Business Association in the period between 2011 and 2015. Engineer Ghali has been graduated from Ain Shams University with an engineering degree. He also has 2 master degrees. One of them is an MBA from the American University in Cairo, and second one is in innovation and entrepreneurship from HEC Paris in 2019. Engineer Ghali, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Hafez. In order to save the time, I think we have also other speakers and a lot of questions. So we have signed beginning of January or on the 13th of January, a high-level letter of intent with the Ministry of Electricity and Renewable Energy and EHC to develop a green hydrogen economy in Egypt. The letter of intent, it represents, from our perspective, the first step to accelerate the development of the green hydrogen capabilities. And it requires us means Siemens and also the ministry and EHC to build the foundation for a new industry that aiming to develop an entirely new value chain, very strong collaboration, partnerships across the industry. From our perspective, the green hydrogen initiative represented in the LOI, it offered the industry a fantastic potential to diversify the economy in a sustainable and decarbonizing way. The LOI itself entails studying the possibility to build a multi-megawatt hydrogen plant to generate green hydrogen from renewable electricity. Then the generated hydrogen can then be transformed into ammonia or methanol or other derivatives for export. From our perspective, this LOI will pave the way to increase the export of renewable electricity or electricity at large in the form of green hydrogen or its derivatives. As I mentioned, we will collaborate with a variety of industrial partners, local Egyptian companies, renewable energy developers, and also as well the Ministry of Electricity entities and EHC, of course. Again, the idea behind it that we want to, we have seen and we have heard today the hype around the green hydrogen in the whole world and also especially in Europe. And we want to build on the success of Egypt in transforming the energy system over the last 4 or 5 years. And as well, from our perspective, the advantage of Egypt to become a green hydrogen exporter, Egypt to Europe or also other growing market. So from our perspective, the time is right now that we start to develop these future technologies, and also very important to develop skills and the industries around it, because it's different steps and different type of skills that some of them we have it in Egypt, but others needs further development. And we have seen also and heard today from the different presentation, there is a large and growing market from hydrogen. And we do believe, based on our initial analysis, that Egypt can produce a green ammonia or green hydrogen, of course, at a competitive price compared to other international markets worldwide. Maybe I would like to add also a very important question, also maybe in 1 or 2 minutes maximum, when the green hydrogen will become commercial, because that's of course an important question on the mind of many of all or many of us. It's a bit difficult to project because this really depends on many factors. Nevertheless, the interest locally and globally and regionally is really growing. There are currently many demo projects and also small to medium scale projects. I mean, projects which have been somehow implemented, not the projects which have been announced, like the 2.5 gigawatt in Saudi. The development are accelerating, and regulations and policies are emerging to support, which we would like to really, I assume that we will see it very soon also in Egypt, policies that support the green hydrogen development. And as well, it depends on the market demand, how fast and how big the market will respond to the usage of hydrogen. The commercialization also depends on the production cost and how quickly this can be reduced, scaled up the production. We are investing as a global organization heavily in the green hydrogen production. As we speak today, we have our, let's say, not the third generation, but at least our second generation of electrolyzer based on PEM technology. And we are working extensively to improve performance, efficiency, and capabilities. that's in a nutshell. I hope that answered your question. I want to leave also room for other speakers and for questions. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ghali. Basically, I may have a clarification, because when I heard that there is an MOU signed between Egypt and Siemens, and I understood that Siemens has already resumed its wind program with Nerea, which is, I believe they agreed about 500 megawatt of wind. Is that will be a kind of combined wind and hydrogen production facility as a first step, or it's a totally separate track from the wind cooperation?
These are completely two separate tracks. So the 500 megawatt wind that our colleagues from Siemens Gamesa Renewable Energy have got the approval of the government sorry, last week. Our project is focusing only on the hydrogen, because we do understand that there are availability of renewable energy electricity, or at least there is a potential even to build further renewable energy projects in the country. But the focus of the letter of intent and the MOU is only on the hydrogen part, because Egypt is becoming now really expert in building a renewable energy plant, either solar or wind, as we have seen the growth over the last few years. So the main focus now, which we want to develop, is develop the hydrogen economy, and how to get the renewable electricity, transform it to green hydrogen, and then take the green hydrogen, transform it to another derivatives, and then export these derivatives or export the hydrogen directly. So this is the real focus of the LOI.
Thank you very much. I think there is many other questions will come soon, because we have a lot of questions coming, but thank you, Engineer Ahmed. And let me move to our next presenter, Mr. Jonathan Walter. Mr. Jonathan Walter will talk to us about the EU-MENA collaboration in green hydrogen and lessons from the past and the way forward. Actually, if Mr. Jonathan allow me, I would like to share a very interesting article wrote by Mr. Jonathan Walter on experience gate from previous regional initiatives like Mediterranean Solar Plan and Desert Tech, and how we shouldn't go in the same mistakes we have it before, and what's different in paradigm in our new hydrogen, because this, I believe, it's a very enlightening article, and I appreciate very much if you allow us to share it with our partners. Mr. Jonathan Walter is an energy economist and macroeconomist. He worked in the World Bank for 26 years until early retirement at the director level in 2014. In BP for 2.5 years on staff exchange. In the government of Switzerland as an ODI fellow for 3 years, and since 2014 as an independent researcher and consultant. Mr. Waters is a senior visiting researcher at Oxford Institute of Energy Studies and senior associate of E3G, the climate change think tank. Mr. Walter was worked on many countries in North Africa, Middle East, Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, East Asia, and former Soviet Union, including in several periods of political and economic crisis. He has been working in Egypt since 2005. In the last 25 years, his work has focused on energy and climate change mitigation, encompassing the strategies, projects, policies, planning, institutional building, financing. He has very extensive experience in partnership between development banks. Mr. Walter is a graduate of Universities of Oxford and London. The floor is yours, Mr. Walter.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hafez. I'd forgotten I'd written such a long bio for you to tell people about. I'm very honored to be participating.
I basically summarized the bio.
Okay, that's a lesson for the future. I'm very happy to be in this workshop. I'm very honored to be here. I hope sometime very soon I'll be able to join you in Egypt. It's been too long since I was last there, and hopefully it will become possible to travel safely again with this pandemic. So I was asked today to actually tell you a long, complicated story, but I'm going to tell it to you very briefly. So if I simplify a bit too much, please forgive me in advance. I was asked to talk about the previous joint initiatives between the EU and MENA on clean energy, and to focus on whether there was some lessons learnt that could mean that we all do things more effectively this time around, particularly in the context of green hydrogen. So let me just share my screen if it lets me.
You can share your screen.
Yep, that's working, right?
Yes, okay, it's good.
Okay, so as I said, I'm going to talk about the lessons from the past, but I'm going to talk about them, and it's not really letting me move the slides. Don't know why. Oh, there. Okay, I'm going to talk about them in order to learn from them. I'm going to talk about why, frankly, they unfortunately didn't achieve very much at the time, but why the circumstances might be different now. And then I'm going to end with some practical steps, some conclusions for action. Yeah. Okay, so the two previous joint initiatives I'm going to talk about, this is from now 11 or 12 years ago, but I'm sure many of you in this workshop, like myself, were participants in these initiatives at the time. We had the Mediterranean Solar Plan and the Desertec Industry Initiative. The Mediterranean Solar Plan, I've kind of summarized it with something that's a little bit of a joke, that it produced more PowerPoints than it produced actual power plants. I wish I was the originator of this joke myself, but actually I'm not, and people have often used it. And when you look at why this is the case, I would say very simply, it calls itself a plan, but normally a plan actually has to have some instruments that are designed to implement the plan and to achieve the objectives. In particular, it needs to have some kind of financing plan, a plan for financing the investments, and the Mediterranean Solar Plan never really had any instruments. Most fundamentally, it was very unclear what the Mediterranean Solar Plan was actually saying about clean energy trade between MENA and the EU. Many people talked about it as if it was about MENA exporting clean energy to the EU, because the conditions, as is very well known, the conditions for renewables, particularly solar, but also to some extent wind, are very good in MENA and better than in the EU. So there was some obvious gains from trade that could be made to mutual benefit. But the Mediterranean Solar Plan never really said very explicitly that that's what it was about. The Desertec Industry Initiative, I would say, was pretty similar to the Mediterranean Solar Plan, but instead of being driven primarily by governments, it was driven by the private sector, by industry. But it also wasn't really clear about the MENA clean energy export issue, the trade issue between MENA and the EU. It sort of was at the very first, but then it got very vague about it. And I think mainly because the industry members of the Desertec Industry Initiative, and I'm talking about the Desertec Industry Initiative back then. I think today it's learned some lessons itself. But the different industries in the initiative had competing interests. Some of them wanted to produce in MENA, some of them wanted just to produce in Europe. And then Europe hit a recession, and investment slowed down anyway, so the whole thing just lost momentum. One thing that needs to really be emphasized is that at that time, the policy framework, policy and legal framework in the EU on clean energy was almost completely focused on domestic production within the EU. Yes, there were some very limited policies that were about imports of clean energy, the famous Article 9 of the Renewable Energy Directive, but that article in that directive was never implemented. It was never clear how to implement it. The broader context on climate change agreements at that time was much weaker than it is today. It was obviously long before the Paris Agreement, and whatever criticisms one may have of the Paris Agreement, it's definitely stronger than the previously existing situation. So there wasn't really the driver of global climate agreements to push the whole clean energy agenda between the EU and MENA. I'd also say, and this might be a little bit controversial, but I'll say it anyway, I think in Europe at the time, we're talking about 11 or 12 years ago, so actually before the so-called Arab Spring, at the time, economic and political developments in the Eastern and Southern Mediterranean didn't really get very high attention in Europe. And as I mentioned earlier, the recession at the time in the EU really slowed down the clean energy and climate ambition. And I think we also need to keep in mind that back then, clean energy was generally more expensive than it is now. So that when people were designing policies to get them out of recession, they would quite likely say, well, this green and clean energy is too expensive for now, we'll do it later. That's changed. Now, people are talking about using clean energy as the cheapest source of energy to help stimulate them out of a recession. I think that's a very important change. I've already mentioned some of these points. Why are things different now for green hydrogen, or rather, why might they be different? I think it's still a slightly open question, even if we have reasons to be optimistic. The Paris Agreement is there, that helps to drive the process. The EU now has its Green Deal. Its Green Deal that is tied to a high ambition on climate, its hydrogen strategies, its industry strategy, its trade strategy. It's, I think, learned some of the lessons for the past, and it's somewhat integrated those different strategies. And perhaps most importantly, because the Green Deal has come to coincide with the pandemic and the need for a economic recovery strategy from the pandemic, the EU increasingly is making those things the same. But the Green Deal is the recovery strategy. It's not, let's postpone the Green Deal and recover first. It's quite the opposite. It's let's recover through implementing the Green Deal. And I think that's very different from the way things were last time. From reading the EU hydrogen strategy and listening to people talking about it and following the policy debate in Europe, it looks like the EU realizes it needs to subsidize the first wave of green hydrogen projects in order to sort of scale up the green hydrogen industry globally, particularly the equipment manufacturer, and through scaling it up, get the costs down so that then the market can just take over and these projects will eventually become commercial. It hasn't yet really worked out the detail of how to do that. That's an important next step that we can expect to happen soon. Something else that has really changed since the days of the Mediterranean Solar Plan and the Desertec Industry Initiative, changed since 10 or 12 years ago, is that there's now a developed renewable energy industry in MENA. There were only the sort of first pilot type projects back then, but now it's a much more developed industry, and it's very clear that renewable energy, particularly solar and also wind, renewable energy in MENA is particularly cheap. It's no longer a sort of idea that it might be, but it's a proven fact that it is. Every time we see a new a new contract, a new tender in MENA. We hit a record low price for solar or for wind, and many people then say, "Oh, it can't go any lower." And then the next time there's a tender, it goes lower, and we don't know, when we're actually going to reach the bottom of that curve. But we just know the costs are falling, and it gives us a lot of cause for optimism, and it means that green hydrogen out of MENA, because of the renewable energy, electricity being so cheap, green hydrogen can be cheaper in MENA, and therefore can be exported to Europe. I think also we need to keep in mind that increasingly there's a tendency to look at natural gas almost like the world has come to look at coal, something that has greenhouse gas emissions, and that policies are going to start moving against natural gas as they've moved against coal, and then green hydrogen can be the replacement. We've already seen signs of this. The EU's infrastructure regulation, I think Dr. Constantinescu mentioned at some point the new 10E regulation on cross-border infrastructure. That regulation looks like it's going to say we have all the natural gas cross-border infrastructure that we want in Europe and between Europe and its neighbors. We're not going to give policy focus on that anymore. We're going to give policy focus on green gases. Same thing in the European Investment Bank's lending policy, no more natural gas. And one other thing that I really want to point out, and I think for the European Commission to really hear this, is the German hydrogen strategy has very specifically included a financing plan for green hydrogen in third countries, including in MENA, and there's now a bilateral agreement between Germany and Morocco that is precisely about that. The EU hydrogen strategy talks about its international dimension, but it's not yet clear what that means in terms of instruments. I remember what I said about the Mediterranean solar plan 10 or 12 years ago not having instruments. Well, I hope that the EU hydrogen strategy develops its instruments so that it can actually be implemented and can drive investment in green hydrogen in MENA, including obviously in Egypt. So let me come to a conclusion. I think what we see is that to create demand for green hydrogen, or to utilize the potential of green hydrogen, we need to look industry by industry, because each industry can use green hydrogen as a feedstock in different ways, whether it's the steel industry or cement or chemicals, or transport, eventually the power sector. People need to look at that in detail. And I think that work is already beginning to happen in Egypt, and it's very important work. And I think that work needs to keep in mind that the EU and potentially other trade partner countries may soon implement import taxes that are depending on the amount of carbon in the amount of CO2 in the imports, a carbon border adjustment tax. In other words, if you produce steel that is green, in the sense that it was produced with green hydrogen or other green gases, it could qualify for an exemption for that tax. And if you don't, then you'll be taxed, and it will make the steel uncompetitive in Europe. That's something that could be coming very soon. And I think all trading partners, including Egypt, all trading partners of the EU, need to be thinking very carefully and preparing for that, because obviously you can't adjust to a tax like that overnight. You really need to prepare. I think another action, and to some extent this is underway, is negotiating with the European Commission and with Germany and other European member states that have green hydrogen strategies, the kind of financing support that would be needed for investments Egypt and elsewhere in MENA. Also to play an advocacy role, kind of a lobbying role, that when the EU introduces subsidies of the first wave of green hydrogen projects, that they apply to imports of green hydrogen from MENA, including from Egypt, because it's not self-evident that it will be designed that way, just as in the days of the Renewable Energy Directive of 2009 and the Mediterranean Solar Plan, the subsidies in Europe were for production in Europe. They weren't for imports. A very key part of this whole development is that if Egypt is going to export green hydrogen to the EU, or to export the derivatives of green hydrogen, then there needs to be some kind of certification system that says that this hydrogen is really green, or this steel or whatever that uses the green hydrogen is really green. There needs to be a certification system. The European Union is developing its certification system for green hydrogen, and I think it's really important that Egypt and other countries develop a system that is compatible with the European system, so that your certificates would be recognized in Europe. And last but not least, what we've seen in Europe is many industries who are interested in green hydrogen have formed hydrogen associations. The last count, there were 39 hydrogen associations in Europe, with about 1,700 companies in those associations. It's obviously something that's very important to those companies. They see the benefit of it, partly because they meet suppliers and customers in those associations, but I think mainly because they get together and they represent their interests. They lobby for policy and regulatory changes with the authorities that will benefit the development of green hydrogen. And I don't know if there's discussion in Egypt of forming such an association, but I think it would be very helpful to the process. So let me stop there and hand back to Dr. Hafez.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Walter, for this very enlightening presentation, and thank you for your optimistic visions regarding that recent development, and the scene now is different 10 years ago, so we might have much better chances. And also for your last slide, which basically could be considered like a roadmap for the National Committee on Hydrogen Strategy, and your proposal really about the association, which Egyptian Association for Hydrogen Production, which is basically relevant to the paper you passed it to me, which I referred to you to it in my opening speech regarding the paper developed or published by Oxford Institute for Energy Studies regarding the role of local associations or industrial associations, and how this bottom-up approach is very much important to work hand in hand with what the government is being decided. But my question is basically, or my concern, is that most of initiatives are very much concerned about technicalities, technology transfer, know-how, but contractual relations, agreements, model agreements. I would like to ask about the ongoing discussion between Morocco and what you call it 4+1, which is Morocco, Spain, Portugal, France, and Germany for exchanging renewable energy. How far it reach and how this could be used as a model for future exchange of renewable energy and maybe in future for hydrogen?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. So that agreement is now ready to be signed, and will be signed at an event in April, I believe. It started with an agreement at the climate change negotiations in Marrakesh a few years ago, and then there were a whole series of, there was a committee formed and a whole series of meetings. That agreement focuses on, particularly on enabling corporate power purchase agreements, cross-border corporate power purchase agreements of renewable electricity, so that a company in Germany could buy renewable electricity from Morocco, or conceivably the other way around, and that you would remove whatever regulatory obstacles there might be, and whatever you would make whatever investments were needed in the interconnections and so on. And one important part of it is that the interconnections would become open access interconnections. In other words, if you are a potential private investor in renewable electricity in Morocco and you want to benefit from the market in Germany or in France, you know that you can get regulated access to the interconnection in order to be able to fulfill your contract with your customer in Germany or France. And that's really important, because currently you can't get access to the interconnector, but with a regulatory change, you could. The other thing this agreement does between the 5 countries is it lays out a kind of roadmap for future discussions. It lays out a roadmap for Morocco to start converging to the regulatory framework in Europe, and it lays out a roadmap to have discussions about other forms of renewable energy, with the implication that it could be discussions about green hydrogen and other green gases. So it's a useful agreement that others could follow, but I think others could follow it and hopefully become even more ambitious than that agreement, because it could achieve more perhaps in the new policy framework, particularly with the Green Deal, the EU Green Deal being in place, which it wasn't in place when the process started for Morocco.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walter. I think although there is many other questions, I think we receive a lot of questions. I encourage you to forward your question. We might not have much time for questions later, but I believe there is a very much important question and we could forward later to you as it comes, but for sure we will try to pick some of your questions to forward to our distinguished speakers and seize these opportunities. We will move forward to our next speaker, which is about financing green hydrogen opportunities and challenges. And this presentation will be offered by Mr. Florian Sickler. I try to pronounce it as I've been told by my colleague Marion in a German scope. Mr. Florian Sickler is Principal Portfolio Manager at the Division Energy North Africa within the KfW Development Bank in Frankfurt. Mr. Florian joined the bank in 2010 and has already held various positions, both in the management of infrastructure and transport projects and as energy economist. He started his career at the Institute of Energy Economics at the University of Cologne. Mr. Sickler, the floor is yours.
Many thanks for having me, and good afternoon. In fact, I work for KfW Development Bank, and KfW implements the financial cooperation on behalf of the German government and the EU. So the bank's annual commitments in the energy sector amount to more than 18 billion euro in Germany and worldwide. And of course, MENA has traditionally been an important region. We finance all the relevant investments, from energy efficiency to grid integration to power to X, as well as power generation. Egypt is one of the important partners for KfW, where cooperation started in '63, and we have an ongoing portfolio of about 1.1 billion euro and about 400 million euro projects under operation. The energy sector is one of the focal sectors for the Egyptian-German financial cooperation, with a big portfolio representing about 40% of our cooperation and focusing on promotion as well of renewable energy and energy efficiency. We are keen to keep supporting the sector, of course. Today, I am going to talk you through the subsector hydrogen from the perspective of a promotional bank. So we heard it from previous speakers, and Professor Hafez, you asked me that if hydrogen is high on the agenda, and you asked me, is it only a temporary hype? Yet for financiers and investors, it is important not being only a hype. We need predictable and reliable policies. Well, that is exactly the case. The signs are very clear. We heard that from various speakers. Firstly, climate neutrality. The EU and Germany have anchored it in law, even. And secondly, without hydrogen and important energy-intensive industry cannot be decarbonized. In other words, there are simply no alternatives. PTX so serves as a catalyst to the increased expansion of renewables and brings the energy transition to the next level. For you, there might be an important message, and we heard that as well. Germany will have to import a large part of the hydrogen. And it is precisely from this that opportunities for economic cooperation arise. The countries of North Africa have ideal conditions. There are excellent sites for solar and wind. Even more, they are well connected to the European markets. And we split the countries in two categories. And interestingly, PTX is an attractive prospect for both of them. For countries like Morocco, we heard a lot of Morocco today, the site conditions yield a double dividend. On the one hand, they have the chance to build a promising export branch. Moreover, they rely strongly on imports of fossil energy. This puts a strain on the budget. Hence, by developing a hydrogen industry, this dependency can be reduced and local value created. But what is in for gas and oil exporting countries, as well as for fossil-based industries? Well, hydrogen and synthetic fuels offer excellent conditions for the incumbents from traditional sectors, I think, such as plant engineering and petrochemical. Existing industry can fully leverage their expertise and competence. Let's start by looking at the timescale. The value of green hydrogen depends on where it is used. It therefore makes sense to first develop those applications where gray hydrogen is already used and where relatively large amounts of CO2 can be avoided. Obviously, this is the case with primary industries. In a second step, it seems appropriate to target those sectors where direct electric drives are not possible due to the required energy density. For instance, shipping, aviation, and heavy industries. Look, one thing is for sure. While there are significant cost reductions, green hydrogen will continue to be more expensive than fossil fuels for many years to come. If you remember, comparable to photovoltaics 20 years ago. Therefore, regulation and financial incentives are crucial for the ramp up. So it is not surprising that Germany and the EU are working on an entire range of instruments, and we have discussed them largely today. Subsidies, minimum quotas for sustainable fuels, CO2 pricing, and what Jonathan mentioned also, border adjustments. We have also discussed with Siemens and colleagues of Mr. Khali whether these instruments will immediately nudge in large-scale projects in emerging economies. So in developing countries, there's still no experience with reference projects. The technical know-how is not yet fully available and the framework conditions are poor. So it is unlikely that export-scale projects can be developed instantly. Moreover, the public sector will not be able to boost the sector alone. In these cases, pilot projects become relevant, relying on a smart combination of CapEx subsidies and soft loans. Such financing for climate action and innovative technology is provided by KfW on behalf of the German government and the EU this can mobilize private capital, which is necessary to achieve broad market penetration. So a concrete example is a reference project in Morocco. It represents an industrial production of green hydrogen on a scale that is so far unique in the world, and it's concretely developed. The Moroccan Agency for Sustainable Energy, MASEN, is the executing agency for this project. KfW provides financing for the development of the project on behalf of the German government. Let us look on the graphic here. The slide shows the plant and its components, various components, from a 200 megawatt wind solar hybrid power generation to the water treatment to the electrolysis. The facility is planned for about 100 megawatt and an output of 10,000 tons per year. Downstream, you can see how the hydrogen is used as a feedstock in the chemical industry and fertilizer production, or synthetic fuel, either directly right in the picture or further processing into derivatives, bottom in the picture. Evidently, the present configuration is mainly suitable for the local market, but future expansion for export is, of course, also an attractive prospect. I give you some examples. The output of 10,000 tons of hydrogen, it could serve to run a fleet of up to 3,000 trucks, or a fuel switch would enable the climate-friendly production of 50,000 tons of steel. That is twice what was needed for Berlin Airport Terminal 1. Now, what about sustainability? And that was also covered by Jonathan when talking about desert tech. Let's take a look. Our studies reveal that North Africa suffers water stress. This is not a surprise. But there is a second result, one that contrasts conventional fallacy, also from the perspective of the Desert Tech initiative. Land is also not available at will. Many think that it is available at will, but it isn't. So it must be ensured that resources are not withdrawn from alternative uses. Therefore, projects will be planned and implemented in accordance with internationally accepted environmental and social standards. In concrete terms, water, for example, the fresh water needed for the electrolysis must be provided with new and additional desalination capacities. Moreover, the costs for this may not be imposed to the general public. No, quite the opposite. The cost must be covered entirely from the proceeds of hydrogen production. But do not worry, these costs are marginal in our calculations in comparison to the total levelized costs. So holistic planning is the key. Another feature of the project is training. It makes sense for all stakeholders to create local value as much as possible. In other words, the development of such a new industry can only be achieved on an equal footing. And that makes, again, a difference to the initiatives we heard from Jonathan 10 or 15 years ago. Finally, I would like to turn the following question: how to optimally address the risks of complex projects, and how can the private sector be mobilized as early as possible for the development and financing of new technologies. In this context, if you allow me, I would like to analyze with you the Noor Ouazzazate project in Morocco. This could serve as a lessons learned here. Without prejudging, of course, the design of the PTX projects currently under development in Morocco and the region. The CSP, that's concentrating solar power technology, of this project was also new at that time, and the uncertainties were still great. Moreover, this is a project where KfW has the lead for the EU funds among the other European partner banks, EIB and AFD. The key success of was the PPP structure. The public side is MASEN, the Moroccan agency. The private side is a private consortium. The public sector and the private sector bring very different competencies to the table. So the private sector provides capital and technological expertise, but at the same time needs planning security and favorable financing conditions. The public sector, on the other hand, can create the appropriate framework conditions. So how does it work? The public agency makes an international tender to designate a private consortium which creates a project company. the company assumes overall responsibility for planning, construction, and operation. The agency, that's a DBOOT model, so to say, for the experts here. The agency, on the other hand, takes a minority share. So the result is development risks and operational risks are distributed between the private and the public side. And the public side assumes many project risks and preparation costs that are difficult to control by the private sector. That's licensing, planning, land mobilization, development of common infrastructure, etc. In other words, the public party makes it easy for investors by playing the role of one face to the customer. We say always a plug and play approach here. The private party can concentrate on what it does best, the provision of technology and capital. In addition, KfW provides favorable debt conditions. We are currently analyzing the specific offtake risks of hydrogen projects, and that's quite different from the power sector. And how these offtake risks can respond, how we can structure them by means of financial and legal structure. Well, we will be happy to continue to share further experience with you and to discuss also the structuring with you as soon as you so wish. I leave it here. Many thanks for the attention. So how can I?
Yes, thank you very much for the enlightening presentation and the identification for the agreement between Germany and Morocco, because basically this one of the big question which was raised, and how this could be used also as a model for other agreements which might come. I understood already there is another signed agreement with Tunisia. Could you shed a light on what's the model or the agreement with Tunisia, and in what aspects is different from that with Morocco?
Well, I speak under the control of my government, because the partnerships were agreed on government-to-government basis. In Morocco, it covers the full range of technical and financial cooperation, pilot demonstration projects, R&D projects, as well as the reference plan, the investment project I have mentioned. And later in December 2020, last year, our government signed as well an agreement with Tunisia. And it's difficult to compare them. It's pretty much the same. It covers also financial and technical cooperation, technology transfer on the one hand, but also investment for first demonstration projects on the level of R&D.
Okay, I think now it's time to move to questions. We have a lot of questions. I will try to combine and summarize some of the question. Our first question might go to Dr. Konstantinescu on how do you view the opportunity to use the existing ammonia plant infrastructure, logistic, terminal, to use PV and wind power for exporting green ammonia. It's basically about how we could use the existing infrastructure through supplying with renewable energy for producing green ammonia. Is that part of the scope of the EU strategy? Is Dr. Konstantinescu is online or is not yet available? Okay. I may move to Engineer Khaled. We have a question about role of e-gas exactly. Actually, e-gas is basically a natural gas company. So the question is the strategy of e-gas to go green or blue? Because Green, it means that you will rely on renewable energy resources. You don't own renewable energy resources. You might get it from the green, from the network. Or blue, and how converting existing facility into blue hydrogen is financially visible. Specifically, most of the strategies internationally talk about green ammonia.
Dr. Hafez, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. As far as I'm concerned in this regard, I'm going to speak not on a policy level, but I'm going to speak on elaborating the thinking and the situation of the already existed infrastructure. In terms of green or blue or whatever kinds of hydrogen as an energy vector, the main focus is to optimize the value added of natural gas, and in this way we could move towards the blue hydrogen, not the green hydrogen. But the problem is that we are facing lots of constraints, especially in terms of the carbon emissions that is already there, and we are in a situation that need the other international oil and gas shareholder in our business to let me say, to highlight a good opportunity for let me say for maximizing the this opportunity to screw the CO2 and blend it in another way to find out another mixture, like for example CO2 plus hydrogen could make the syngases, and in another way the CO2 with the ammonia could produce the urea. So we are thinking in this way, the way of maximizing and optimizing the value added of natural gas. And on the other way, we are thinking deeply, in fact, in how to use the infrastructure of natural gas to make a blend and transport the hydrogen with the most promising blending ratio, which, as far as I remember, the European Party has identified a blending rate of about up to 20 or 30% in some of their documents in this regard. So we are standing still over there, waiting for their shareholder in making this kind of study and capacity building for the Egyptian party in terms of the gas business. And if we could find another way for let me say transporting the blue hydrogen and the blue ammonia, we shall try to go this way also, because we already know that the methane, the steam methane reforming for the natural gas could produce the gray hydrogen, in fact, and with some sort of treatment mechanism, we can extract the carbon, make a carbon capture, utilization, and even sequestration. And then we could, with some sort of endorsement and certification, let me say certification mechanism, we hopefully will be able to have a market for the green, for the blue and for the blue hydrogen and ammonia. This is one of the one. On the other hand, in behalf of the green hydrogen, as far as you know, it sounds like renewable energy will be the source of electricity to produce the green hydrogen through the water electrolyzer, and then after producing this green hydrogen, what is the possibility of transporting this green hydrogen to the European and the overseas territories. So we are thinking also to provide our logistics and our experience in this issue to stand hand by hand with the Minister of Electricity in these regards. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Engineer Khalid. I have a question to Engineer Ahmad Ghali regarding, is the MOU between Siemens and Ministry of Electricity include a kind of like joint project in local manufacturing, for example, electrolyzers, or any know-how transfer regarding establish kind of this industry, which might help in reducing prices and make project more economical?
Know-how transfer, yes. This is always what Siemens and Siemens Energy were doing and will continue to do. Manufacturing, I think that will come hopefully maybe in the future, because right now we want to focus on building the local economy around the hydrogen, understand what it takes to transform the hydrogen, to transform renewable electricity into hydrogen, and then take the hydrogen, transform it to another derivatives, and then export these derivatives. So this is the focus, as I mentioned before. But manufacturing, I think, let's first focus and develop the hydrogen economy and develop an attractive market, local market and export market, and then we can go to the next step of manufacturing. But know-how transfer, of course.
Thank you. Mr. Walter, following the same trend, blue or green, we have another question, which is local or export. Yani, how do you believe that the best way to develop the market is that focusing more on creating a local demand for the market, which might be more easy to get access finance, or export where might be prices more rewarding, but maybe the market's not yet clear? So local or export, what do you think?
I think that ultimately the two will reinforce each other. There will be local demand in Egypt. In fact, some of that local demand will be for hydrogen, particularly green hydrogen, as an input to products that will then be exported. So it's not really clear whether it's local or exports, to be honest. But I also think that, you know, the most important thing is going to be to do things on a large scale in order to reduce the unit costs. And there will be many occasions where doing it in both the local and the export market will be the way to achieve that scale. And it will also reduce the risks by diversifying the markets. I mean, that's a very general answer to a question at that kind of high level. But generally, I think that local and export markets will be mutually reinforcing.
Also following this, there is many questions which provide kind of skepticism about prices or economic viability. Currently, for example, ammonia produced from natural gas is 1/3 the cost of ammonia produced from green hydrogen. You mentioned in your presentation that economy of scale might help in reducing prices. When you think that the market could reach a kind of a balanced without any kind of you mentioned subsidies in the market. When you think, because the subsidies mean pumping additional. Engineer Khalid, I appreciate if you could mute your microphone.
Dr. Hafez, I think if I knew the answer to that question, I would be a very rich man. You know, I think a lot is going to depend on how quickly the subsidy regime in Europe or elsewhere for green hydrogen and for other green gases, for derivatives of green hydrogen, how quickly those subsidies go into place and increase until we start to see the costs of the green gases falling because of economies of scale. I don't know the answer to how quickly that will be, because I don't really have a clear picture of how quickly let me say that the European Union is going to, as we say in British English, is going to put its money where its mouth is. I mean, the policy declarations are so strong, and we've yet to see the actual instruments to achieve those policy declarations. So until we see that and we have a sense of that, it's really hard to say what the time frame would be. If there's a very aggressive policy because the European Union genuinely believes that this is part of its solution for economic crisis and for economic recovery, then we could see the costs of green hydrogen and other gases falling very fast. Let's see.
Thank you. Question to Mr. Sickler basically is about the model you presented for Mazen, which is basically a kind of a public-private partnership in finance as well as an off-taker, which might be similar to the model already exists also in the Gulf area, but might be different from the model which is being used in Egypt, where finance is practically private by private sector, and the public is the off-taker. As a financier, what kind of a model make you more comfort and look to that market is that could go faster, or it's being assessed case by case?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. And you're fully right. The model which was presented from Morocco is very similar to the one in the Gulf, the DEWA model, the PPP structure. Yeah, I totally agree. It's case by case. I presented the model because it gets light on several functions in a project and how these roles and functions can be distributed. And it depends very much on the project type, on the size of the project, and the maturity of the market, and the specific role of also the public sector in a country. This model, for example, has a very strong role in from the public side as a developer, as I said, on a one-stop shop. It integrates also regulative functions. In a more mature market where you have a well-established regulatory environment, there might be different models to go for.
Thank you. I have two questions to Dr. Hayat. Dr. Hayat is still on, I believe. Dr. Hayat? He left. Actually, basically, we received two questions. It's an open to our participant. One of them about maybe it goes to Engineer Khalid, involvement of the academia and research and development in the strategy for hydrogen. Is that kind of scope for doing this? And a second question about Kima. Actually, just to give a background who might not know Kima, this is a fertilizer company which was established in Egypt back in the 50s. This company was practically producing green hydrogen. Actually, it was rely on electrolysis, 160 megawatt of electrolysis, and it was powered by hydropower. So it's practically 120,000 tons of urea produced practically from green hydrogen. Unfortunately, the advice which is made back maybe in the 90s was to switch to natural gas, to the green hydrogen. Maybe back to the future, I would say, or back to beginnings, is to go back again. So what could be the chances to revive Kima again? I don't know so far what the status is, but I think this was 160 megawatt. So Engineer Khalid, the question, is this one part of the scope of the strategy is how you could engage the academia and research and development in the Egyptian strategy for hydrogen. Is Engineer Khalid is available? He might not listen.
I'm here, Dr. Hafez. Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Yes.
Okay.
We have two questions. One about research and
yes,
development, and the second one about KEMA.
Okay. If, as far as I understand, if you are speaking for the academia question, if it is in terms of the Egyptian party, we are trying to interfere with different, let me say, with different authorities like the Ministry of Higher Education and the Ministry of Education, in terms of interfering the syllabus and other, let me say, other hydrogen initiatives inside the syllabus. But if you are speaking about the international academia, it's another situation. We, as far as we have learned from the European Party and the other international parties, there is a lot of programs are working there in their countries, and we are eager enough to interfere, make a kind of let me say bilateral cooperation in terms of postgraduate and PhD studies in terms of hydrogen, like the way we already did with the international partners in terms of gas and gas diploma and something like this. This is one question. I hope that I had enough reply. In terms of KEMA, yes, in terms of KEMA, in fact, it is totally renewed again. As far as I know from the people of the petrochemical, the plant over there had been the old plant had been refurbished and renewed again, and the situation is not clear for me to the moment. In fact, if you give me a chance to come back to the petrochemical personnel, I can give you an answer, but give me just a couple of days. Thank you.
Very good. I have a question to Engineer Ghali. Actually, it came that Siemens already have a lot of power plants in Egypt, conventional power plants. What's the potential of having like a partial hydrogen operation of this plant, or this plant could be upgraded to operate on hydrogen? Is that part of the scope to do such kind of assessment of the EMU, MOU, or it's a parallel track?
It might be a part of the scope, but again, it depends. It will come back to the point, what is more valuable for the country is to export the hydrogen, or to burn basically the hydrogen in gas turbines or in power plants, or to burn the natural gas, or what's valuable to export the hydrogen, or to be a green in derivative form like green ammonia or green methanol, or to export the natural gas also as ammonia and methanol. So this is the business case which will decide if to burn it in the gas turbines or not. So it is possible, of course, to burn hydrogen in the power plant to a certain extent, but compared to the price of natural gas in the market, I think it makes sense from my own perspective that to focus on exporting the hydrogen. That will bring more value to Egypt and to the country economy.
Very good, thank you. We have a question to Mr. Zickler, which about with a strong ties between Germany and Egypt, do you have already first KfW project in this green industry? Is there already KfW have something now going on for cooperation in Egypt for a certain green hydrogen application, ammonia, green ammonia, or something still not yet formulated? He is there. Mr. Florin?
Could you repeat? Dr. Hafez, could you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
It's a question to Mr. Sigler. It's basically about keeping in mind the strong ties between KfW and Egypt. Is there something in the pipeline of KfW for developing a project for green hydrogen, either in the ammonia field or in methanol or other application? I think, and Mr. Florence might not there for a while. Yes. Back to Mr. Walter, about the point you raised about guarantee of origin certificates. Do you think that a kind of, specifically Europe has its own system and might not all countries in the South Mediterranean? Do you think that it's a kind of a mutual recognition or a general agreement for having a unified guarantee of origin certificates could be helpful to be assured that trade of this, not just hydrogen or renewable, could be applied? What's better?
Okay, so in my understanding, the European system of certifying that hydrogen is green, that system is still under development. So one option that Egypt or other countries have is to try and have some input, if possible, into the development of that system, to sort of influence the development of that system so that it can be developed in a way that is compatible with the needs of Egypt. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Whether it's better to have one system of certification or just to make sure that the Egyptian system is compatible with whatever develops in Europe, I don't really know. My inclination would be that when you try to coordinate something across a great many countries, it's very hard to achieve something, or at least to achieve something that you really wanted. It might be better to do two things: one, for Egypt to try and influence, if it's possible, the development of the system in Europe, and at the same time to follow that development very closely to make sure that whatever Egyptian system is created is consistent with what's happening in Europe, not necessarily identical, but consistent. I know that's a very general answer to the question, but I think the certification system is still in the process of evolving. So it's not really possible to be more specific.
I'm happy with this answer practically, because this was a point of view which said that might be a local certification system be developed, but it should take into consideration the best practices, so it would grant a kind of mutual recognition, but it's not necessary to be identical. As you mentioned, this might facilitate, because to have a multi-party kind of agreement, something might take years and years, which might not conclude on a time where it might be needed. I have a general question to all our speakers, if somebody has a background. Actually, the model for cooperation between Australia and Japan maybe represent kind of a guideline. There is a background about how this agreement and what kind of scope this go forward? Walter, you have a background? Yes. Actually, because maybe Japan is a little bit specific case, because energy prices too much higher, maybe create much attractive export market. I think we need also to follow this agreement. Also, another general question about NEOM, because we talk about substantial production of green ammonia, 1.2 million. Who is the off-taker? And how far is a market is reliable? It's understood that Saudi Arabia has a very good financial position, but it's understood that there is some other partner in the market. From a banking, maybe I forward to both Walter and Sigler as a bankers. From a banking point of view, others' involvement in this project, how they got finance this project, while the market still, I believe, is in the shade area and going with that large quantities of green ammonia. I don't think, actually, this is a very general question, but it usually was many times being considered that how far or how speed we should go is that we would slowly and carefully, or we go aggressively to seize opportunities, because who got benefits, who are go first. So it's still a kind of philosophical maybe question. I think we take a lot of your times. Now we exceeded 2.5 hours. Thank you very much for all our distinguished speakers about their views and contribution, which is basically shed a lot of light to us to understand where we are and what could be the challenges. We have some maybe roadmap we could come out, and I think this webinar could be used by our national committee to help them in developing their working agenda. Also, I would like to thank all our attendees for their active contribution, for their questions. Sorry, we are not able to respond to all questions, but we will try to get answer later about these questions. But we would like to thank them very much. And actually, they were the drivers for selecting this through our previous seminars, and many questions came on hydrogen. And I hope they are satisfied with what we did. And for sure, we will are proceeding with other webinars which could respond to what they think about what's the energy transition and future of energy in Egypt. Thank you very much, and I appreciate. I would like to thank Marion for her effort in organizing, coordinating, communicating our webinar. And thank you very much for all, and see you in our next webinar. Thank you very much.